All right, y'all. Thank you for joining the new SEC podcast. I'm Ray Ledette Jr. We got Hunter Ziesman here. We got an extra special guest this week, Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus, or PFF. Many of you may know who he is from the PFF football show with him and Dalton Wasserman, but we're really excited to have him come on. We're going to be talking transfer portal, upcoming quarterfinals, previews, thoughts on the season. Max, welcome to the show, and we'd love to hear your thoughts as the season wraps up here.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's kind of a crazy time in college football right now, where you mentioned it. The portal is going absolutely wild right now. And then obviously still have 4 amazing quarterfinal games to kind of whittle it down in the college football playoffs. So it's a really fun time right now to be a college football fan.
Yeah, the headlines keep flying across. It's hard to even keep track of it all. So we're trying to do a little bit of that here. And, as names enter the portal, that all shakes its way out. There's a lot of big names, right? And I think, let's not wait around. Let's get right into some of the big names. The biggest right now, Auburn wide receiver. The mass exodus from Auburn, really, but led right now by wide receiver Cam Coleman, highly touted as a recruit, now in the transfer portal. Got to see a little bit of your thoughts as the news broke on some of the teams that you saw him going to, with, Alabama, LSU, A&M being kind of your top 3. What was the reason, I guess, behind those 3 main teams as you saw for a landing spot for him?
Yeah, I would actually throw, now that I'm seeing more reporting from Pete Nakos at On3, does a great job there. He mentioned Texas as a school to watch too, and I actually think that's a great call by him too, because I think there's a little bit of a need at wide receiver for them, and you go to a school where you got Steve Sarkisian, who kind of runs like an NFL type of offense, and you have Arch Manning, who I think is a really, really good quarterback. I think that's probably another school to watch too, but Alabama, obviously he's from Alabama. They got the wide receivers coach, I believe, from Auburn. Actually, Alabama just hired, so he's familiar with the wide receivers coach there. So I think that's definitely a school to watch. He and Ryan Williams together next year. I know Ryan Williams kind of down year this year, but that'd be a really fun pairing if that happened. LSU's losing a lot in that receiving core. And again, going to a school like LSU, who should bring in a top tier quarterback in the portal. I don't know who that would be yet, but it seems like they're going to get someone. And they got obviously Lane Kiffin there too. And then Texas A&M, he was actually committed to Texas A&M before he flipped to Auburn. So I think that's still a school he's looking at right now. And obviously they have Mario Craver going back next year, who's one of the best receivers in the country. So I think he and Craver could form a dynamic duo with Marcel Reed at quarterback too. So I think he's going to stay in the SEC. I've seen some talk about Ohio State. That would be crazy. If he goes with Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sain down there, maybe they're an option. I've seen Oklahoma listed as an option. I've seen Florida listed as an option too. I do think Cam Coleman most likely will stay in the SEC. And if I had to predict right now, I think that the Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M, those are the 4 schools that I kind of keep an eye on right now for Cam Coleman.
Yeah, and those 3 schools, right, especially the LSUs, they produce NFL receivers. I think Cam Coleman can go to the NFL right now and be a top first-round draft pick, but LSU produces NFL receivers. Texas is an interesting one. We saw DeAndre Moore enter the portal for them at the wide receiver position, one of their top receivers. And then, of course, A&M. You saw what the transfer portal did for them with Casey Concepcion. He's going to be a first-round receiver most likely. So Cam Coleman could potentially fill in that KC spot alongside Craver, like you mentioned. What do you feel like stands out to you about Cam's game, whether it's PFF stats wise or just watching him throughout the season?
I think, the numbers don't jump off the page, but I don't even attribute that to him, because I think the Auburn quarterback situation these last 2 years, honestly, the last few years, has been a disaster. That's what led to Hugh Freeze getting fired in the first place. So I would caution against people saying, well, look at the stats. Like, he's not really that great. Like, if you watch tape on this guy, man, he's 6'3". He moves like he's 5'10". He is, I think, as good as any receiver in college football in 50-50 jump ball situations. He's made some outrageous catches in his career so far. So you combine the size, the athleticism, the ability to win one-on-one. I think this guy is easily a top 5 to 10 receiver in college football right now. And like you said before, I can see Cam Coleman, if he goes to another school and explodes with a better quarterback and a better offensive system than he had at Auburn, this guy could be a top 10 pick in the draft, honestly. Like, this guy is that good. And I think not only is he a wide receiver 1 at the college level, I can see this guy being a number 1 receiver for an NFL team too.
Yeah. I mean, if you put on like a limited highlight tape for Jackson Arnold this year that wasn't involving running, it would be great plays from Cam Coleman that kind of highlighted what he was able to do at all in the passing game. And that's where I think like A&M is a hot landing spot for him, as opposed to maybe in Alabama or LSU. In my mind, is like, he's kind of been put into the situation of uncertainty at quarterbacks with whether at Auburn, like he hasn't had a solid guy. Where if you look at going to A&M, you have a returning quarterback. LSU, I'm sure you're going to get a good guy out of the portal, but it's still uncertain right now. Alabama, you have question marks on next year. Where, Texas A&M, you have that continuity to where maybe you're not going into a problem situation like you kind of faced this year at Auburn, where the quarterback receiver connection was just never there.
And that's really important, right? You had Peyton Thorne last season. You got Jackson Arnold this season, a little bit of Ashton Daniels. Definitely could see him with a Julian Sayin or see him with a Arch Manning or Marcel Reed. But big splash. I think it came out today around like 1 or 2 p.m. I was looking at the On3 rankings. He's number 1 in the transfer portal right now for all players. So this is a very big deal with him entering. What are you going to say next?
Real quick, I want to bring up too, I think the big part of him leaving Auburn, not only is it that, it just has not worked out the first 2 years. I think the Golesh system has proven time and time again that it is not translatable to the NFL at all. For wide receivers, especially, they run a very, very limited route tree. So I'm sure Cam Coleman looked at that. And I mean, look at the Tennessee wide receivers, right? There's a lot of, whenever a Tennessee wide receiver comes out of college, like Chris Brazzell, for example, too, is always going to have the question of, okay, can you run an NFL route tree, or can you only run the go routes, the slant routes? That's all you run really at Tennessee.
Right.
So I think that's another big thing to know in this. I think that played a big part too, is that I as good as the system is, and I think it's a great college system, there's always questions for NFL teams whenever a receiver is coming out and a quarterback is coming out of that system too. So I think for Cam Coleman, who definitely wants to play on Sundays, he probably looked at that and said, I just don't know if that's going to be the best thing for my long-term outlook as an NFL prospect.
And that's a really good point to bring up, right? I think the last major wide receiver that I can remember from Tennessee, I think about Jalen Hyatt, hasn't done too much with the New York Giants. So you're right. That's something a guy of his caliber probably thinks about when it comes to where does he want to play football for the next year or two.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you probably have Byron Brown going there. Like, I would imagine he's going to be there, like, barring something crazy, like he will likely be there, doing his thing. At Auburn, we got a lot of other guys in the portal this year too. Like, there's skill players all over, especially at the running back position. It's a huge running back portal. You got the entire Texas running back room in the portal. You got some guys looking to move up from, the G5 level. You got Caleb Hawkins and Cam Cook, kind of in two of the leaders when it comes to not only touches on the ball, broken tackles. They're looking to be, I guess, the next Ahmad Hardy, stepping up from G5 to P4. Right. So
there's Ahmad Hardy, there's Mekhi Hughes, right? There's the Jay Knotts. So I think it's really important you end up at the right spot. The running back portal room has been talked about a lot, and I was excited to have you on, Max, and talk about this topic. And as Hunter kind of already teased, what are your thoughts on the running back room in the portal, and what the market looks like? On3 put out an article and said that they're expecting these guys to make between $350K to $2 million. It's almost like NFL free agency. Like, what is the value of a running back in this particular season? So thoughts on this market, thoughts on some of the guys in the portal, and maybe where they fit.
I think right now you can argue, I know there's a lot of great quarterbacks in the portal too, but I think you can argue that the running back position is the strongest in the portal right now. There's a lot of guys that I'm really excited about that are currently looking for another home right now too. I think it starts, in my opinion, with Caleb Hawkins, the North Texas running back, who was a true freshman this past year, and he was one of the best running backs in college football this year, honestly. And I think you mentioned before, Texas losing all those running backs in the portal. Now they have a big need at running back. I would not be surprised if the Longhorns go really hard after Caleb Hawkins. If not, maybe I've heard Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State makes a lot of sense too, following his head coach, Eric Morris. But I would not be surprised if Texas makes a serious push at Caleb Hawkins, who's supposed to play 2 more years at college too. So you got him. Hollywood Smothers had a great year at NC State this past year. So I'm excited about him. Trey Wisner, of course, Texas running back, is a good player. Excited to see what he can do. Jaheim White barely played this last year, but he entered the year as a top 10 running back in the country for me because of how good he was in his first 2 years at West Virginia. So I'm excited about him. Cam Cook, Wayne Knight from James Madison is a really good player too. So, man, it is quite a loaded running back class that we have right now. And in my opinion, I think Caleb Hawkins is the star of that group. And if I'm a team that really needs a running back, like say at Texas, he is the first guy that I'm blowing the phone up for. Because the fact that you get that kid for 2 years, I mean, Caleb Hawkins most likely is going to enter next year as a top 5 running back in the country for me. So I think, and you get that guy for 2 years. So I would really, if I'm Texas or anyone else that needs a running back, that's the first guy I'm really going hard after.
And Denton, Texas isn't too far of a commute, right? From Austin, Texas. It's probably about 4.5 hours right in the DFW area. What about Caleb Hawkins' game impresses you? People talk about the competition level at the G5, but with the advanced analytics that PFF has and what you've watched, like what about his game particularly impresses you?
I think the physicality, man. I think that's usually something that needs to get developed for running backs when they get into college originally, because of course you come into college and gotta spend a lot of time in the weight room just getting up to a college build. And he entered, college ready to go. And I think, the competition level is of course a concern whenever you have a guy moving up from G5 level. But I mean, look, you guys mentioned before, look at Ahmad Hardy. I mean, Ahmad Hardy is the best running back in college football going into next year, in my opinion. He came from the G5 level. So I think Caleb Hawkins, I don't know if it would be as good as Ahmad Hardy, but I think it could be a really, really good running back in in wherever he goes. Probably SEC, I would probably imagine. But I think Caleb Hawkins, like I said, he is probably going to be a top 5 back in the country for me. I think his physicality to me is always jumps off the tape whenever I turn his tape on.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the most translatable offense, I think, to any team, where if you look at, the explosiveness of the North Texas offense, the balancedness of the pass game, it translates over. Where if I'm looking at someone like Cam Cook, Randall and I talked a little bit about this, I'm curious to see how his play at Jacksonville State translates to the next level because of the amount of touches he had. It was such a volume runner that, can you do that? There was 66% run play percentage at Jacksonville State, 5th in the nation behind just the military schools and Rice. He's physical, breaking tackles, but he's a volume runner, where if you go to another school, you likely won't be getting those amount of touches. So how does it translate? That's why, Hollywood Smothers, Caleb Hawkins, some of those guys I think are a little bit higher for me when it comes to like targets to go get.
A lot of G5 guys. I keep going back to that. You got Wayne Wright from JMU. I think a lot of guys into the portal from JMU, just given with the coach going to UCLA. Where do you see guys like Wayne Knight, Cam Cook fitting when it comes to either high P4 with ACC or Big 12, or maybe high P2 with Big 10 and SEC for some of those guys?
Yeah, I think the school to watch, obviously, first off, for any James Madison players, of course, UCLA, right, with Bob Chesney going to Los Angeles. So I think, that's probably the top school I'd look at for, Wayne Knight. Sahir West, the edge rusher, is a really good player from James Madison. I think UCLA is probably one of the top options for him too. Really needs help along that defensive line. So those are the guys I look at first for him. For Cam Cook's an interesting one, and I think you guys are right to put out. I like him a lot. He's a really good player, but I am lower on him than other running backs right now. Even though the stats were outrageous for him this year at Jacksonville State, that was, again, like you mentioned, a volume thing. Jacksonville State runs the ball as much as anyone in the country, and Cam Cook was a bell cow for all of that. So he is a terrific player. But I'm a little lower on him than, say, a Caleb Hawkins or someone else, because I think the efficiency is a little bit worse than what a Caleb Hawkins or anyone else like that is too. But yeah, I think for any James Madison player, like I said, though, I think UCLA is probably the top school I'd look at for almost any of those players.
Yeah. Cam Cook, there's a couple interesting fits there. I think the Texas one for Caleb Hawkins is good. I'd be interested to see what happens with Jaden Ball down the line at Florida.
Yeah.
Depending on how meetings go with the new staff and how he feels about his future there. I mean, he was essentially 90% of their offense this season. Like, without him getting involved, Florida couldn't do anything. If he does decide to leave, Cam Cook could be a good get there. You see, the old OC for Cook going for the QB job at Arkansas looking to do a little bit of a rebuild. Braylon Russell obviously will still be there at this point. Those could be some interesting fits for him. It's so hard to tell just with the amount of teams that there are and how there's still probably players who will trickle into the portal, like in the next, few days even.
Yeah, no, it's definitely really interesting. I mean, there's some other guys that I looked at who On3 had ranked, Adam Muhammad from Washington. They had Dylan Edwards back in the portal again from Kansas State. Obviously, many people know he played for Colorado with Dion, went back home to Kansas, and now he's in the portal. Jarrett Gibson, I think you brought it up around Texas. I want to say Texas let go of their running back coach. I could be wrong there, but their entire running back room pretty much entered the portal. So it's a good market. I guess last question for you. I know you're not Pete Nakos per se, but like, who do you think is like, where do you feel like someone like Hollywood Smothers would go? Like, who's going to be like the biggest running back to go to the biggest school outside of Caleb Hawkins in Texas, maybe?
Oh, good question. Smothers is interesting. He's a really good player. Trying to think who would really be going after, like maybe in Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame would be looking at some running backs. I know they got a really good room, but I think both Jeremiah and Price will be going to the NFL this year. So they could be in the market for someone like Smothers. And of course they played against Smothers this year, so they know how good of a player he is. So I can see them potentially making a run at him, but Yeah, I think there's a lot of schools that, I mean, maybe in Alabama could be looking to add to their running back room because of how bad they've run the ball this year. They could probably want to get a really good number one running back for that, a bell cow running back in that system too. So maybe they're a school to watch. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't really know too much about Smothers and where he's kind of looking at right now. But there are a lot of, I know Penn State could really be looking for a running back this year too with Katron and Nick Singleton, both leaving the program too. So yeah, Smothers is a guy that I'd be really interested in. I think he's probably a top 15 player in the portal right now and probably the number 2 running back behind Caleb Hawkins, in my opinion, at least. So he's definitely a guy that I'd be really interested in seeing where he goes.
Yeah, I like the Notre Dame. I like the Notre Dame call. I think there's some room there to maybe go out and get somebody. Like they don't want to find themselves out of the playoffs next year. Like they have the room for a guy to come in and he would be a good fit there. Clemson, maybe. Clemson could be someone to watch. Like not typically a portal heavy team, but you have a need at running back. Like you lose them to the portal, you lose them to the draft. Like this, it could be a good fit to say, enter ACC.
Yeah. And I feel like the Carolina guys typically stay around the Carolinas sometimes as well. And so, in addition to the running back position, the quarterback room right now in the portal is super deep as well. And there's guys like Sam Levitt, there's guys like DJ Lagway, some guys who are, we'll say like packaged and ready to go right now. Other guys maybe could use some more massaging and coaching. When you think about this quarterback room between the Mestamakers, the Levitts, what fits potentially excite you the most?
I think for Levitt, I think if Dante Moore declares, Oregon would be a really fun fit. He's obviously from Oregon. I think that's probably a school to watch out for. I've heard LSU is a school to watch out for Sam Levitt too. I'm sure Lane Kiffin wants to bring in someone. We'll see if Trinidad Chambliss gets another year of eligibility from the NCAA. But if he does, I could see him following Lane Kiffin to LSU once Ole Miss is done with their playoff run. So I think those are some schools to watch. Mestmaker, I would love if Mestmaker went to Indiana. I think he'd be a perfect fit in that offense for Curt Cignetti. I don't know if that'll happen from all the reporting I've seen. It seems like they're after some other guys like Josh Hoover, for example. But I can see Mestmaker going to Oklahoma State with his coach, Eric Morris. But, man, I think if they're interested, I think Mestmaker would be phenomenal in that system. Sorsby, I'm a big fan of from Cincinnati. Had a great year at Cincinnati this year. I've heard all along that Texas Tech is the school to watch for him right now. I know that everyone kind of knows that his girlfriend is playing volleyball at Texas Tech, and that's, of course, a thing to keep in mind whenever you're looking at some of these guys. But, yeah, it's an interesting quarterback class, man. Honestly, Byron Brown seems like he's going to go to Auburn with his coach. Seems like Rocco Beck's going to go to Penn State with his coach too. So you could see guys just follow their coaches too. And, yeah, obviously the 2 wild cards are kind of Lagway and Raiola right now. I think that both those guys are extremely physically talented, and both those guys are still raw in a lot of areas too. So you're probably going to see them go maybe somewhere like a Louisville for Raiola, maybe an LSU for Lagway. Miami's going to be interested in getting a quarterback this year too. I've heard Baylor thrown out there for Lagway too, where his dad played. And of course, he grew up right around that area at Baylor too. So those 2 are very interesting. And Josh Hoover's a really good player too. I'm excited to see where he can go. I think Indiana's probably a school to watch, or Louisville or something like that for him too. But yeah, it's an interesting quarterback class this year, man. There's a lot of really talented guys in it, and a lot of really solid starting options in it too right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have a lot of the ones that we had kind of been talking about, like in phone calls and things like, all right, where do you think Lagway is going to go? Where do you think some of these guys are going to go? With the run that Indiana has, a lot of these guys are getting kind of tied to a school. Like you look at a guy like, Sorsby to Texas Tech, like you mentioned, or Beck to Penn State. And like I want to see Indiana be able to get their next guy and like who that might be, especially with the run that they've had. And as guys start getting picked out of the portal and they start narrowing down, I think Mestamaker would be a good one there. I'm curious about, Anthony Colandrea out of UNLV, like where he finds himself, some of these other guys, because Mendoza going into the portal wasn't necessarily the highest quarterback transfer prospect and turned into, what he is now. So I think there's some of these guys to keep on, as the next IU project.
Definitely. I mean, there's definitely a lot of guys that could be that next IU project. And when hearing Max and hearing you guys talk about some of the quarterbacks this year, it made me think about in the past, some of these quarterbacks were like just ready to go, like the Bo Nixes in some ways, the Dylan Gabriels going from Oklahoma to Oregon. Some of these guys are a little bit more of a project. Like I think, Levitt probably would be in the top 2 rounds draft wise, but a lot of these guys still need some development to potentially get to where they want to get to in the draft, right? We saw Mensa go back to Duke. I think if he was in the portal, he'd probably be a top 5 quarterback personally. And then when I think about, Byron Brown, Mestamaker, Levitt, Mestemaker can't declare yet. Do we think that he goes to like Oklahoma State and follows his old coach, or should he set his sights almost a little bit higher given how good of a season he had?
Yeah, I think Oklahoma State's probably the school to know for him right now, as it is for Caleb Hawkins, even the wide receiver Wyatt Young, who I think is an extremely talented player too. From North Texas, I think just anytime a coach leaves a program to go to a bigger job or go to another job, I think whenever those guys enter the portal is always kind of the number one school you're looking at is wherever the coach ends up. So I think Oklahoma State's probably the favorite right now. But man, if Kirsten comes calling to me and he offers me, hey, we want you to be our quarterback next year, I don't know how you say no, man. I mean, you saw Curtis Rourke, what he did last year at Indiana. He had a great year. And then Mendoza this year, you guys are right. Like I wasn't that high on Mendoza going into the year, and he won the Heisman Trophy and could be the number 1 overall pick in the draft right now. So I get it. You want to follow your coach to wherever he goes because it worked out so great for you at North Texas. But also, if Cignetti comes calling, man, I don't know how you say no after what he's done these last 2 years in Indiana.
I agree. It made me think. I'm like, do we see a kind of like a Dante Moore, Bo Nix, Dylan Gabriel situation where like a quarterback who's really good goes to a good program and sits for a year? I don't think Mestemaker would probably do that, but I could see that even for like a guy from UNLV, like sit behind a guy who's going to be like a 1-year player, and then maybe the starting job is yours a year later.
Yeah, definitely.
There's room for that. I mean, it's interesting to wonder where some of these guys are going to go like that, even, aren't high profile names, but could be a good get. Bo Prabula, for example, at first it was a big tie for him to go back to Penn State, but now, Rocco Beck's kind of that ideal target there. Does he follow James Franklin to Virginia Tech? Like he didn't have the best year at Missouri, injury and things like that played into it. And you got backups like Aaron Philo. Like he's a guy who's been tied to Florida conversations and he hasn't started. He's been involved in the mix at Georgia Tech. So there's other guys to keep an eye on that aren't those high profiles that will still be somebody for a team too. Alonzo Barnett now out of JMU being another one too.
So you wrote an article last year about the top 10 transfers, I think around June. And one of the guys you mentioned was Carson Beck. You talked about some other players. When you look at this quarterback class, like if you had to kind of crystal ball it, who do you think will be like the top 4 transfers going into next season?
Ooh, at quarterback or in general?
Yeah.
Quarterback. Okay, quarterback, I think Leavitt. I think Sam Leavitt's problem this year is that I don't want to say he got too cocky, but he played a little too much hero ball. Whereas last year he was really conservative and just ran the offense and let Scadaboo be the hero. And Leavitt played fantastic football. I think this year without Scadaboo, he kind of played hero ball too much. Whoever gets to Leavitt, if you can rein him in, he can once again be a top 5 quarterback in the country. I think there's no doubt about that. I put him number 1. I put Mestemaker number 2. I was blown away by his tape this year at North Texas. And I think if he goes to the right spot, like in Indiana or wherever else, he could turn into a Heisman Trophy candidate. Honestly, I think that guy has serious ceiling there. Sorsby was fantastic this year. I probably put him 3. He was so good at Cincinnati. I was really blown away by him. So I think he's a guy that probably would have been like a 3rd or 4th round pick in the draft if he declared this year. So that if you get that kind of guy in the portal, that's a big get for whoever gets him. Byron Brown was fantastic this year at USF. So if Auburn does get him, I'm really curious to see how he does in the SEC. So I probably put him 4. And then I think maybe Josh Hoover 5. I think Hoover is a really good quarterback at TCU. He's not a superstar by any stretch or anything like that. But say if Indiana does get Josh Hoover, I could see him turning into a really good quarterback at the college level.
Yeah, I like that pick. I do like that pick. I think that would be a good landing spot for him. And I like that rundown. I'm interested to see where Leavitt goes. Like I think Oregon's probably best. I'm just so curious to see what happens with LSU. Like,
yeah,
I'm just waiting. And I feel like a lot of quarterbacks maybe are waiting as well with conversations around the whole Trinidad Chambliss thing, like you mentioned, not to rehash that, but like until would he be the preferred Lane Kiffin get to continue that run with Chambliss if he gets granted that additional, eligibility? So don't waste your time if you're someone like, Leavitt, if Lane already has his eyes set that I want to continue the run with Chambliss.
That's assuming that if he gets that extra year, he wants to leave Ole Miss.
True
as well, right? Like obviously he could stay there and be the guy, like be up there with the Jackson Darts, the Matt Corrals, depending on how the rest of the season goes. Yeah, I guess a lot of the pieces look like they're pretty locked in. You've talked about Hoover in Indiana. We talked about Mestemaker and where he could go. The 3 questions for me is like, where does Raiola go? Does he get better development? Where does Lagway go? And then the third question you already talked about, Hunter, who does LSU get? Do they stay with Van Buren? do they get someone else? But like, I'm really more curious about Raiola and Lagway. I didn't know his dad played for Baylor. I did know he had ties to Baylor, but I didn't know they played for Baylor. That was interesting. But with Raiola, what are your thoughts on where he could potentially go?
I've heard Louisville a lot for him. So I think that'd be a really interesting place for him, and I actually would like that a lot because I think he and Dana Holgerson's offense was just not suited to Raiola at all. They did not push the ball downfield nearly enough as they should have at Nebraska this year. In my opinion, it was a very dink and dunk offense, and I just think it was not a horrible fit. I think for Raiola's skill set. So going to a place like Louisville where Jeff Brom has done an amazing job of developing quarterbacks during his time there. I think that'd be a really fun fit for him too. I've heard Oregon for Raiola too. I don't know. I think it's more about Raiola wanting to go to Oregon. I'm not sure if Oregon really wants Raiola like that badly. Maybe he'd be an option for them. Maybe they strike out some other guys first. But so yeah, I think those are two to keep an eye on right now. But I do think Louisville is probably the school to know for Raiola right now.
Love it, love it. Well, Max, thank you once again for joining. We're looking really forward to these upcoming games here on Wednesday and Thursday as the playoffs continue. For everyone who tunes into the new SEC podcast, we really appreciate y'all taking the time to watch our content. We love college football. We love SEC football. We're college football diehards in general. So, as always, I'm Randall Jr., got Hunter Eastman, and Max. Thanks once again for joining. Till next time.